Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 sci-fi and fantasy books of 2023. I will be doing another video which will be my 2023 book awards. It will be a bit longer and much more expansive, but today I am going to be just talking about sci-fi and fantasy books. I did read predominantly sci-fi and fantasy, so that's why I thought I would just do a dedicated top 10 rather than an all-encompassing top 10. These were all clear winners in my mind. These were all, 5+ stars. These are all books that you can go no wrong with. And there was a really nice mixture actually of new authors, existing authors that I've read. There were also no repeated authors from what I can tell. Yeah, no repeated authors. And I also had a few self-published authors this time. So it's a really nice mix. And I think it's also got a pretty nice mix of genders as well. Not super great, but also not the worst. So let's jump in. In 10th place, we have a self-published book. It is a grim, dark, kind of Scottish folklore inspired fantasy series, and that is Seat of Souls by N.C. Scrimshire. The first book is out, and that came out in 2023, and it was just one of the best prizes. I saw the cover and I just really loved the vibe of the cover, and then when I actually started reading it, I think I finished it in like 3 days, and it was like popcorn, and it was just so easy to consume, but like in the best way possible. I really like the character work. I really love the Scottish folklore aspects. I really enjoyed the character relationships and the character development that we got by the end of the book. And I'm really curious to see where this series goes, because there were some twists and turns towards the end of the first book. It's very atmospheric as well, and the writing is incredible. Like, I cannot compliment Nicola's writing enough because it is truly exceptional. Truly exceptional. If you're looking for something a bit folksy, that's like a good winter read, that is dark but also has moments that are very tender, then you should definitely check out Seat of Souls by N.C. Scrimshire. Next plus, in 9th place, we have The Mermaid's Tale by D.G. Valdron. This is also self-published, I believe, and this was a book that I had on my radar for a while, but the book had been out of print. This book is amazing. It's so good. It is a standalone grim dark fantasy book. I think it's one of the darkest books I've ever read. There are scenes in that book where even I had to take a pause and go for a little walk because they were very heavy. They were very well written though, and they were written in a way that was really in tone with the overall feel of the book. I think this is one of those books that a lot of people aren't going to enjoy just because of the very gory, very graphic descriptions that are happening. That being said, I think if you are somebody who likes dark fantasy, grim dark fantasy, I think this is going to be the type of book that will be up your street. So if you haven't checked it out, you have to, because not only is it amazingly written and it's very atmospheric, just like the last book, the character development, especially of our main character, is so well done. It's so well done. I'm not going to say anything more than that. Just please take my word for it. You all know that I'm a character-driven reader. This is one of the best character development journeys that I've seen in recent times. Next up, in 8th place, we have The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This is a sci-fi book, and this is one of the most beautifully, if not the most beautifully written book I've ever read. And I haven't even read the author's second book yet. It is just a poem. It's so poetic. It's so lyrical. It's almost quite whimsical, but like not. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just got the most beautiful tone to it. And you want to savor the words because it's just so exquisitely crafted. The characters are very compelling. The story is not the most obvious story. It takes a little bit of time to get into it. But when we do get into it, it is just an incredible journey that we go on with these characters. It is very much a space opera. It's spanning time and multiple locations. And it's just really as epic as you can get. Next up, in 7th place, we have another self-published book, and that is A Quiet Vengeance by Tim Hardy. I've talked about this book so much on my channel now, and it's criminally underrated. I think it has under like 50 reviews on Goodreads, which is just ridiculous. And honestly, more of you lovely people need to go pick it up because I think a lot of you would really like it. It's a really solid standalone set in the world of one of Tim Hardy's fantasy series, which is called The Brotherhood and the Eagle, but you can definitely read this without reading his other books. It's one of those books that is just the character development and the character journeys are just so well crafted. You really buy into our two main characters. It's a multi-POV story, and we really get these people by the end of the book and why they have done the things they have done. They are very consistent. Their actions are very consistent with their character and the world, and it's quite dark, but it is quite dark. I wouldn't say it's the darkest book on this list by any means, but it does have some very interesting thematic work around like discovery and purpose and all of those fun things that we love to read in our fantasy books. It's really, really fantastic, and I cannot wait to see what Tim Hardy does next, because he can do no wrong in my opinion. Next up, we have a repeat author, and that's going to be a surprise to no one. He's featured in every single list that I've done on my channel since the inception of my channel, and that is Savius Corax Deals with the Dead by KJ Parker. This is the first book in the Savius Corax trilogy, and it's so good. It's so good. Like, I had a worry about this newer series because a lot of what I've read of Parker's is his backlist, and I've been making my way through that. But when I read this, I consumed it in a day. I remember sitting on my beanie bag and I did not move apart from to maybe go and get something to eat. Aside from that, I did not move from that space, and my back definitely did hurt a little bit by the end of it. But it was so worth it. It was just so wonderful to consume, and the character of Saviax is such a compelling character. Our other characters are so compelling, especially our main female character, such a compelling individual. I will be doing a series review of the entire trilogy once I've finished off the trilogy. I've got one book left. But overall, like, I think it's one of my favorites of his because it's just such a good fun time. It's very much got a lot of end adventure aspects, but the character development is also fantastic. It's also incredibly witty, which all of Parker's books are, but I think this one is exceptionally witty, and I just love it. Absolutely love it. All right, we have 5 left. In 5th place, we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarahi by S.A. Chakraborty. I've also talked about this book quite a lot on my channel. I just really love it. Like, I was always worried about whatever S.A. Chakraborty was going to work on next because I love the David Bad trilogy. It's one of my favourite fantasy series of all time. Definitely in my top 5. So I was a little bit anxious, but I love this book and I love the start of the trilogy because I love our main character, Amina. She's an older woman. I think she's in her 40s. She has a child. She's a retired pirate. And yet she's being pulled back into this world. And I loved getting her stories of what she was like when she was younger, but then also seeing her as an older woman. I love seeing this Muslim woman get the front and center stage. That just does not happen in literature in general. It doesn't happen in any form of medium in general. And so for quite a well-known fantasy author to do this and get it published was really quite remarkable. And not only that, it was just exquisitely written. I think anyone who likes well-written fantasy would really enjoy it. It's just a good time, good characters, you'll laugh out loud. There's some darker bits, there's some interesting thematic work. Go check it out. In 4th place, we have a sci-fi book, and that is Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert. So good. These next 4, I would say, are like, if I had to rank, these next 4 are probably like tied for 1st place. It's just, you know, if I had to be really pedantic about it, like I said, all of these books are 5+ stars and I recommend every single one of them. But the next 4, all tied. Dune Messiah is just one of those books that made me think about, you know, what, and I've said this before, like what it takes to be a good leader and what it takes to be a leader that sometimes has to make really hard decisions that aren't necessarily the most favorable decisions, though, at least from the perspective of whoever is following that leader, right? And I think a lot of what Herbert discusses in this book are very relevant to a political context, but also very relevant to a business context and a social context. And that's kind of where I took a lot from this. You know, I think a lot about how I manage my team and how I interact with my team and all of these things. And I kid you not, like, this book made me think about that in slightly different terms in a way that no other author has done before. And I just think that's quite remarkable. I just never would have expected to get that from a sci-fi book. It's deeply introspective and the character work is incredible. The thematic work, as I said, is just exceptional. And, you know, I just wish it had been longer. You know, that's my only criticism. I just wish this had been a full-length book, really deep diving into the topics that are discussed. Next up, in third place, we have The Great Ordeal by R. Scott Baker. This is the third book in the Aspect Emperor series, and it's the sixth book in the overall Second Apocalypse world. And it's really funny, you know, after I read that book, I genuinely didn't know what was happening for half of it. It felt very oppressive, and I felt almost quite claustrophobic reading it at certain points. But in hindsight, it was one of the best books that I read last year. It was just absolutely flawlessly executed. There were certain things and certain mechanisms that Baker employs in that book that really make him stand out as an incredibly talented author compared to a lot of the fantasy that we get out today. It's one of those books that is very much a trip. Like, it feels very trippy. You will definitely not get most of it, but that's all right. You know, with Baker, you just kind of have to accept the ride and basically expect to do a reread of the series, which I will be doing probably not this year, maybe next year, because there's so much nuance packed into what he's writing, and there's consequences upon consequences upon consequences of the actions of our characters, and yet we don't fully realize them the first time we consume it. And so I'm very excited to reread this book at some point, but it was just exceptional. Like, I still think about it quite a lot, especially the parts in the ruins. Like, it's just, yeah, it's really, really good. Really, really, really good. In second place, we have a book that I haven't talked about yet on my channel at all, and I will be doing a review of it soon. I want to really do a thoughtful review about this book and about the series, and that is The Sword of the Lictor by Gene Wolfe. This is the third book in the Book of the New Sun. This book was amazing. It was so good. The first and second book, don't get me wrong, were amazing too, and I think overall, I gave every book like either a 4.7 or 5 stars. But this one, the third one, is the one that really shone for me. There's certain things that Wolfe does, and I'm not going to go into this now because I don't want to spoil, and I will do a dedicated review. There's certain things that he does in this book, though, that made me pause, put down the book, go outside, come back, and then read it. And very few authors do that for me. And I just think Wolfe, you can tell he's one of those people that just loves writing and he loves reading, because it's a book for people who appreciate books, in my opinion. Because I feel like this series and this book, is a love letter to people who love books. And I don't know much about Wolfe as a person. I have a few videos with interviews with him, and I will get to them at some point. But I just knowing very little about him, I just can tell he loves writing. And there's so many different mechanisms that he employs. You know, he writes plays, poems, letters, all within the novel, which is just insane. It's absolutely insane that an author can do that. The only person that I can even remotely think that compares and is probably a level up just because of who he is, and that's Tolkien. You know, Tolkien created his own language and all of that. But Wolfe, you know, he creates stories within stories, and it's so multi-layered. It's very philosophical. And I'd say the same about Baker as well. But I think Wolfe does it in a way that's much more accessible. But even then, it's not easy to read. Like, I think the books themselves are easy to read and easy to consume, but whether you really get what the author is getting at is a separate question. And I don't think you're always going to get the meaning that is packed into every single word, every single sentence that Wolfe has written. It's really quite incredible. And yeah, I'm going to leave my full thoughts for another video, but watch this space for that because I can't wait to rave about it. And then in first place, and if you've been watching my channel even for, you know, a remote while, you'll probably know what this is, and that's a sci-fi book. We have Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Charlie. I still think about Charlie. I've said this in every video where I've ever talked about this book. I always think about Charlie. It's just one of the most incredible books. It's about consciousness. It's about identity. It's about what it means to be human, what it means to have intelligence, which also has connotations for what is human level intelligence versus what is artificial intelligence. It's just really interesting, you know. It's a really, really interesting book. And it's one of these books that I'm going to treasure until the end of time. The character work is phenomenal. The thematic work is what really sold me on this book. I read it in about half a day because I was so consumed with what was happening to Charlie, seeing his journey from the start to the middle to the end. Oh man, it's heartbreaking. It's one of the most heartbreaking books I've ever read. It's one of the few books that actually managed to get a tear out of me, which very, very rarely happens. But it's just a masterpiece, and it's a masterclass in how to write incredibly complex, but at the same time, simple and intimate stories about very compelling topics. And I think it's one of those books that genuinely changed my life. Like, I still think about this book a lot, and I can't recommend it enough. I can't recommend any of these books enough, but I think Flowers for Algernon is just, it's just on another level, folks. Like, you gotta read it. You gotta read it. So there we have it. Those are my top 10 SFF books of 2023. Let me know down below what were your top 3, 5, 10, whatever you wish to share with me. I would love to hear. Let me know if you've read any of these books, and if you've not, let me know if you're going to pick any of them up. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It always helps. Subscribe to my channel as well if you haven't, and if you like the look of this content. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe as always. Take care, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.